Hey everybody, how you doing? I promised I would come back, and I am back, albeit late. Apologize for that, but wanted to make sure, among other things, I promised that I have a a list of defensive coordinators I thought the Raiders should go after, and I jettisoned that because I focused on one name, and it's Derek Mason. And those of you who follow football say, "Wait a minute, Derek Mason, wasn't he the coach at Vanderbilt, the head coach?" And I would say, yes. And then you would say, didn't he get fired? And I would say, well, yeah, that happens. And if you remember him at Stanford, you would say, wait a minute, he was a pretty good D coordinator at Stanford. And you would then probably say, what happened at Vanderbilt? To which I would add, first of all, he was not only a pretty good defensive coordinator, he was one of the best in the country. And I think what happened at Vanderbilt was that, I'll just be blunt, I don't think Derek was as great a football administrator as he was a D coordinator. And there's a difference. When you are entrusted to be a head coach, you have to be, I'm trying to find the right words here because I don't be misunderstood, but you have to be good at understanding how to handle when players get injured, how to deal with when players have problems with families. And there are a lot of variables that go into being a college football coach that don't even come into being at the head coach level, that don't even come into play at the NFL level. First of all, you have to recruit. But then I think even more important than that, you have to have assistants that can carry out your edict and ideas as well as you can, so that you can turn around without looking and know that they're doing a good job. And then you have to deal with the changes in the conference itself. There are other variables there that have to do with drug use and the economies of families and scholarships. There are a lot of variables that go into play there. And the man he took over for, James Franklin went 9-4. And I think, as we've seen at Penn State, Franklin is an excellent administrator. But when it comes to playing in the game of coach as a defensive coordinator, as a position coordinator, that's different. You can focus a lot more on scheme and technique. You can focus on the nuts and bolts, okay, of making sure, in this instance, a defense operates properly. And the reason why I focused on Derek Mason, I said, I want someone who's African American. The reason I say that is because, let's be 1,000,000% honest with each other. There's an affirmative action for white coaches too. And some coaches, like John Gruden, had it with his coaching friends. He had a list of people that he said he wanted to work with if he ever became a head coach again. And Paul Guenther was one of those people. Okay. So this hiring friends thing is really a type of affirmative action too. It doesn't work. Sometimes teams you have to hire this person, that person, the other person. The Raiders have had that at points, that strategy, that style, that edict, if you will. In this instance, Mark Davis gave John Gruden pretty much a blank slate initially. But now I think it's time to make an injection, if you will. And so you would say, okay, why him? Why Derek Mason? Why? What's the purpose of wanting Derek Mason? And the purpose of wanting Derek Mason has to do with a familiar foe. And it has to do, hey, Yusuf asked, he goes, where's your list? As I said, coming out, I started to form that list and I decided not to. And the reason was I focused on Derek Mason for the reasons I am explaining right now. And I'll continue to explain those. And I'm glad you're paying attention. Okay. First of all, this is the reason, the first reason. And when I show it to you, you will say, okay. But this is the reason that I focused on Derek Mason. And it's something that has given a number of teams problems, and it combined with its personnel has been something that has proven difficult to stop. And if you don't get a handle on how you're going to stop it, it can be a long day. The other problem is that more than one organization now is operating this, and the virus that is this approach is spreading. And it's spreading rather rapidly. And for good reason. It works. Okay. And so it works quite well more often than not. Really well. It works even better than its original variation. So you would say, okay, Zinni, what is this thing that you keep cryptically referring to? Okay. And that thing that I keep cryptically referring to, pure and simply, I should say, comes from an organization that when I mention it, you're going to say, oh, yeah. And then you're going to say, but I'm still not getting it. Okay. And the reason why I'm hesitantly kind of rolling this out is because I'm waiting for the particular web page I want to show you to open. And slow internet day all over. Or maybe I'm just dealing with a slow internet page there. So if that's slow, I'll use this one. Because this one should be, well, maybe not. It's not, the whole thing's not opening for me like I want. There it is. Okay, now. All right. Hold on a second. This, folks, will give you a big hint. A gigantic one. The Kansas City Chiefs read option. Okay. The Kansas City Chiefs read option. And the Kansas City Chiefs read option is something that the Raiders and other teams have been quite obsessed with stopping for obvious reasons. The Raiders did it once, but the second time, we didn't. And I contend the reason why we weren't successful is because we focused on a scheme that was an approach and a personnel design that was more focused on beating Kansas City than stopping a form of football that not only Kansas City plays, but has its origins in part in the SEC. You see, I hope you can see where I'm going with this. Okay. So that is why I asserted that was the best guy for the job, or gal. We're at that point in our society. But this is Derek Mason, if you don't know what he looks like, from his Stanford days. That's Derek Mason, okay? But what you may not know about Derek Mason, and something I really do want you to read, comes from this article or blog post, really. There's a difference to me, from what's called Saturday Down South. And Saturday Down South had this excellent piece that It's entitled very simply this: Film Study: What the SEC Can Learn from Defensive Guru Derek Mason. What the SEC Can Learn from Defensive Guru Derek Mason. This is from Oliver Connolly. It was written 4 years ago. Okay, and it's quite a good piece. Okay, and I'll go over it with you. He basically starts by saying, there's Derek there, when he was Vanderbilt. Okay, and basically, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I know what he says right off the bat, but I'm just going to basically say just right off the bat, here is what he is trying, the point that he is trying to make regarding hiring Mason, and that is simply that in developing, Derek Mason developed a defense at Stanford to stop Oregon. Stanford successfully stopped Oregon and its version of the read option that Chip Kelly originally bought into football many times, to a point where Stanford itself became Pac-10, Pac-12 champions. Okay, and so I think no, right, yeah. Here's Kirk Herbstreit says, due to the study is. No, Vandy should not bring down Derek Mason at all. Derek Mason was by many, even before that article, considered a defensive genius. Okay, but it's not just that he was considered a defensive genius. Okay, that name can be thrown out a lot. The question is why, and the reason why is simply that he figured out how to slow down, not necessarily stop, but slow down the read option to a point where Stanford, an organization, a college football organization that had, let's face it, much less in terms of talent than Oregon, had a fighting chance to actually beat Oregon. And Stanford did that so many times that it wasn't a fluke. And I think most notably, Derek Mason did not at all use anything gimmicky. What he did was he used, and this is why it's a departure for me, and I was thinking more in terms of what the Raiders needed than my personal feelings regarding scheme. Derek Mason's defense two gap, but they're hybrid two gaps. He will install a two gap where it's appropriate. And what I mean by a two gap is a two gap scheme asks the defenders, simply to hold more than one gap. Let me show you what I'm talking about, in referring to that. One moment, please. It's like I was looking for something to draw because I would feel better about drawing. All right, but I'm not going to draw it. I'm just going to describe it. In a single gap system, you are described. Let's say I am the defender. Okay, and if you imagine me, an offensive lineman before me, in a single gap system, I have to either choose this gap or that gap. Is to go through and control that gap. In the Cowboys flex defense that Tom Landry designed, what I was told to do was, if it's flex strong and I am the defensive tackle on, let's say, if I'm the right defensive tackle and it's flex strong, which means, let's say, the tight end is on my right side, all right, and it's flex strong, then I'm down on the line of scrimmage and I flow to the tackle guard gap on the strong side and I control it. I don't go through it, I hold it. Then I flow to the ball. Okay. The two gap asks you to hold the person before you The only thing I don't like about the two gap is sometimes the person with that, if you don't use the right leverage, you can get blown out the ball if you play too high. The problem with the Raiders in the past is they would play two gap and tackles like, remember Eddie Vanderdoes would play too high. And it's because the Raiders weren't monitoring that. It wasn't, you could tell by just watching them, it wasn't an edict to where they would say, hey, look, you must play lower than the person in front of you. Get leverage, right? And so how many times did we see the Raiders get quite literally pushed off the ball because they were caught off guard? So if you're two gapping, you have to make absolutely certain your leverage is sound. And Derek Mason, by all accounts, made absolutely certain that leverage was sound. And his coaching produced a number of upset wins. But I go back to Stanford because at Stanford, with the plate at Stanford with the system that they had and the personnel, it was more equal to what they were facing in the rest of the Pac-12 than Vanderbilt in the SEC with the rest of the SEC at the time. Okay, during the time that he's coached. I mean, let's face it, he didn't have the greatest recruiting years. That's not his thing. All right, being D coordinator is his thing. And so Muhammad says Kirk Herbstreit said same. Says, did KC run an offense like Oregon? Yeah, it's very much. It takes a number of elements, from Oregon, particularly what some people call the glance pass. And the glance pass, you've seen it a lot, is where a person will fake. Let me see if I can find a example of it. Glance pass, NFL. Some call it a glance pass. There are a number of different names for it, but I guarantee you, when you see a photograph of it, you'll say, "Oh yeah, I know what he's talking about." Let's see here. It's why this is so slow. Boy, oh boy, slow. That's the hold up here. Let's see here. Glance pass. History. Glance pass. It actually went backward. There it is. NFL. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. Images. Okay. Trying to find the right. Here we go. Bad example. Another bad example. Here's what I'm looking for. Glance RPO. Here's the example. This is the glance RPO, folks. Right here. And it's not. Okay, it's not letting me. My system is really bad. All right. I am going to do this another way because I don't want to be held up by the weirdness of technology. I'm going to be the tech because I can draw this out better, illustrate it better than the examples I'm finding. All right. So I don't have a moving camera where you can see, what I'm doing. Okay. And show you. But again, when you see it, you'll say, oh yeah. Okay. And there, here. This, that, fake, and then bam. Okay. So there and there. Okay. Here it is, folks, right here. This is it. This is the glance pass that Chip Kelly brought to Oregon and the Kansas City Chiefs and other teams use today, like the Colts, much less the Raiders. You've seen it. The halfback starts here, comes over. It's a fake sweep. Fakes. And meanwhile, the slot back, generally use the slot back. Some people use the split in. I don't recommend that because the best results are with the slot. Runs the slant in, right? Makes the catch. And very often, the middle of the defense is open. Why? Because you're asking the defense to move in this direction with a fake, which essentially splits the defense open and allows, if you're lucky, the free safety moves this way. You got a quarterback that's over here. You got a natural void there. How many teams have you seen run variations of that play? Okay. How many teams? That play, and it's a very simplistic version of the play, but you've seen it a bunch of times, including many times today. That play is a part of the Chiefs offense, as well as the standard read option fakes. And Andy Reid made it quite clear some time ago that he was going to build an offense around that, and he did. He started with Alex Smith. But with Patrick Mahomes, he's taken his read option spread approach, mixed it with the Bill Walsh offense, and created something that is just completely beautiful. All right. But if you're an opponent, it's got to be stopped. And so Derek Mason offers us a better opportunity of designing defenses that can stop not only the Chiefs' approach, but the Colts' approach and many other approaches. It's focused on stopping the run first, essentially working inside out, okay? Inside out. And it's said that when Derek Mason was at Stanford and he was invited to these coaching conventions, his lectures were among the most popular, among the most well-attended, all right? And so he says, did Mason run a 3-4-4-3? Actually, that's a very good question. He actually ran both. What I mean by that is sometimes there's a tendency, including among myself, to refer to a 3-4-4-3 in terms of numbers. In other words, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs, or 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers, and 4 defensive backs. But another way of thinking about it is also fronts, odd front, even front, and so on. Derek Mason ran a variety of defenses to stop it. A lot of what he does, and what he did particularly at Stanford, is not unlike what New England does. Bill Belichick is really in love with two-gapping. And there's not much difference between Belichick's approach and Mason's approach. So basically, if you're saying, are you telling me we're getting a young Bill Belichick in terms of defense? My answer would be yes, in terms of defense. Okay. I'm not saying it applies to head coaching, but then on the other hand, how many Bill Belichick defensive coordinators have we seen that didn't necessarily pan out to be great head coaches, right? All right. So he says, knowing Mayock, he'll probably bring in Venables. Brent Venables, interesting, is got a job, I think. Brent's got a job. Brent Venables is got. And the reason why I say that is that, look, Brent Venables is already clearing $2 million a year plus. Okay, the college D coordinators, they're bringing in SEC schools. These dudes are rich. All right, they're clocking in at $2 million a year, easy. Okay, that's also true for the offensive coordinators. Looking at $1 million a year, $2 million a year, depending on the school. They're not hurting. All right, so you would really have to make it worth his while, Brent Venables, to leave, and his position. Meanwhile, why do that when Derek Mason is unemployed? You know, and for stupid reasons. Why? Because he let a woman be his kicker. That's a dumb reason to fire somebody. I mean, she's doing well. So Nathan says that play eats us up alive. Yeah, that play is the scourge of the NFL. That play is the scourge of the NFL without question. But also, we've got to make a change, and we have to be, as an organization, more strategic. I mean, John brought in his friend, but look what his friend did. The Raiders finished, let's see, 31st in 2018, 24th in defense in 2019, and then this year they were 26th, right? We were 26th. So the change has to be drastic, and it can't be John hiring his friends. Something else that I think is notable, hey, welcome to the show, about Derek Mason in this, and talking about Gruden, is that Derek Mason, when he was at Stanford, had the moniker. This was his title. His title was the Willie Shaw Director of Defense. Okay, his title was the Willie Shaw. I repeat, the Willie Shaw Director of Defense. Okay, and if you know the Raiders, you know that Willie Shaw was John Gruden's first defensive coordinator and a good one. But they didn't get along because they butted heads. I don't know how John will take to Derek Mason, but my guess is that A, he probably knows him already because Derek was at Stanford for so long, and B, I think they'll work wonderfully well together. Derek Mason's temperament is not like that of Willie Shaw's. But the reason why he was given the moniker Willie Shaw Director of Defense is an anonymous donor came through, Stanford's a rich school, and gave them a humongous amount of money. David Shaw's chair alone at Stanford, at least the Stanford football team has a $500 million endowment. Okay? $500 million endowment. So Stanford is sitting pretty, and they will sit pretty for some time. So he says, with COVID, it's going to be hard to pay these popular coaches. That's a very good question. I don't have a good answer for that, Nathan. My best answer would be a hypothesis. And I think if you're signing up someone to a long-term contract, first of all, you have set amount of money coming from the National Football League to run your organization. So that's going to be there. That TV contract money that's divvied up is not all entirely for players. It quite literally is the lifeblood of the National Football League. And here's the best news of all. It's already paid. Okay? It's already paid. Where the football organizations have a problem is in the local revenues that they're trying to get from sponsorships. And those local revenues can affect such things as free agency. But there's a core amount teams have to spend on their organizations that is intact. And so, but you're asking a question, Nathan. Eustace says Gunther got lucky his year with the Bengals. I think Gunther, he got into a situation where I think that year it was, if we go back and take a look at Paul Gunther's, tenure at the Bengals, right? Since Bengals, I don't know if any year is so much luck, all right, as and I would say it's not so much luck as, well, some of it's luck. Some of it's luck as who your boss was and the organization that you coach within. Um, I think they were blessed with an offense that was appropriately explosive and could get them out of situations if need be, and was just good enough to cover up for his defensive errors. All right. And so he had, and so remember, he was promoted to the Bengals as defensive coordinator in 2014. And he and what he did, and that was basically he was replacing Mike Zimmer, because Mike Zimmer had left to coach the Cincinnati Bengals, excuse me, the Minnesota Vikings that lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. Wow, an ugly game, if you saw that. Oh, there've been a lot of beautiful games and ugly games this year. But so I think that what Paul Guenther, when you go into a situation as a D coordinator, you either hired because you know defense so well, the head coach doesn't need to imprint his mark on you to say, I want you to do X, Y, or Z. Or the head coach says, this is what I want you to do, and you can mix in your ideas. And Paul Guenther was more the other side. So you have to remember, when he was at that point, he was working for Marvin Lewis. All right. And Marvin Lewis is widely acknowledged as one of the most successful defensive coordinators in the history of the NFL. All right. And so when you're with someone like that and their approach, what you have is a situation where you're having to adopt some of their input, of their approach. And Marvin had come over, and he was known as the man who built the Baltimore Ravens defense into a power. All right. He was defensive coordinator from 1996 to 2001. And he was then Bengals head coach from 2003 to 2018. So during that time, he had Paul Guenther with him. So when I think of Paul Guenther in the Bengals case, I think of a man hired to run a defense that was really built by Marvin Lewis, who was at head coach. So Paul did a great job of essentially carrying out Marvin Lewis' idea of defense, sprinkled in with some of his own. Okay. And so says Pittsburgh game with the Bengals made Guenther's scheme look good. Concussion game. I don't know about that. I wouldn't pick that. The nature of a defense is not to say, we got somebody knocked out. It's to say we stopped your offense. You can knock people out. And it doesn't mean you're stopping their offense. I'll give you an example. I went to a Raiders preseason game August 14th, 19. And it was the New England Patriots, the visiting New England Patriots. And there was a guy named Darryl Stingley who had, if I'm not mistaken, 143 yards receiving the first half, until in the middle of catching what was a routine drive pattern, kind of a longer than slant pattern over the middle by Steve Grogan. He got hit by Jack Tatum, and he never played again. Okay. And I'll never forget, 32 passing by my binoculars when I was looking at my binoculars. So I was at the game. And that was my first Raiders preseason game. I got the tickets from Otis Sistrunk. My mom had befriended Otis Sistrunk. Yes, the same Otis Sistrunk who was University of Mars with the Raiders, right? And went with my friend Bill Boyd to that game. And yeah, that was the game where Darryl Stingley was paralyzed because of a hit by Jack Tatum. Now, I say that because prior to that, the Patriots offense was eating the Raiders defense alive, and after that, they still were. It didn't stop. Okay? So you can say, yeah, we knocked somebody out, but if their scheme and personnel are superior to yours in terms of the way that they use it, their scheme and personnel, okay, so you knock somebody out, fine. You still lost the game. You still gave up a lot of yards. BFD, right? BFD. All right. Muhammad says, I would say Gunther was excited to come when Mac was here. He had all these players set up, but when he got traded, everything changed. Yeah, I think, again, I think the Khalil Mack problem, and I know the Raiders don't like to say this, and they don't admit it, but the paperwork shows that the Raiders, because of the problems in the shortfall of money that was then and still is now coming in from the hotel tax for the stadium, because the Raiders had to collect contractually the first roughly 2 years of that money and use it to pay for the stadium, they realized, and I said this is going to happen because their tax rate was too small, but they said, Zenny, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. And then all these reports started coming in. Hey, the tax rate's not sufficient. What happened? The Raiders got roughly, I would say 30 million less than what they needed. And they started chopping off heads, and they went to this draft strategy. Because remember, this was the year they brought in Colton Miller. And that year was also the year that they parted ways with Khalil Mack. And they didn't, and Amari Cooper. And everyone was, why? Because they couldn't afford to pay them because their monies were being constricted by problems because of the too low stadium hotel tax used to pay off the $645 million portion of the $750 million subsidy. The $645 million is the bond issue. The $750 million is the total subsidy. And why was it divided? Just to go off topic just for a second, why was it divided like that? Because look, Mark Davis and Sheldon Adelson said, hey, look, 750 or we walk. And Guy Hobbs, who was their financial advisor, a friend of mine, good guy in Las Vegas, he was stuck with the problem. And the problem was, hey, how do I arrange to pay them all this money and yet design a bond issue that Clark County can afford? And then they stuck it to him politically by making sure the tax rate was lower, because the hotel casino people said, we don't want this tax rate to cause us to raise our room rents. But they're already gouging people as it was for CES and other events. So who cares, right? Okay, back to the topic. And so he says, that's crazy. I never knew this. Yeah, a lot of people didn't, because you have these so-called journalist types who changed as just another subject off topic for a second. One sentence. In the old days of news that I remember, they would go to experts and they would ask a question. They knew, and they would have the experts generally in-house. They had enough money to hire their own experts, and their own experts would do the math, right? Now they go and they talk to the person that the bad news is about, and they give that person the chance to do their own reputation management and say, oh, well, that's not true. That person doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay. But the bottom line is that everybody who says, well, I talked to so and so. I don't care who you talk to. I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Do the math. If you don't know how to do the math, all right, and the math is presented to you, just admit it. But don't say so and so said something. Because what happened in my case, I had Sisolak and everyone else saying to everybody else, Zinni doesn't know what he's talking about. And then, hey, as soon as they started collecting the tax in April, Steve Wolford, Las Vegas TV, I think it's KNSV TV. I got that screwed up. But Steve Wolford put out a news report on television saying that the revenues are coming in less than expected, like from jump. Okay, and then it got worse, and of course you know what happened this year. All right, so okay, so he says back the defense needs a Bill Belichick quarterback, so just do your job. The boxing science. He says if I see Abrams jump another tight end route, I'm going to pull my eyes out. I think I would not discourage that kind of aggression. And the reason I won't is because the coaches, look, his play doing that has produced more good than harm. All right. I mean, so with that approach, you always take the good with the bad. But in Abrams' case, you got to admit he's an enforcer, and there's a lot more good that comes with that than bad. He says they stayed in Cali, what would have been? Wow. Well, you know, if they stayed in Cali, what would have been? Couldn't play at the Coliseum, would have had to go to Arizona too. And given the way the stadium was going, it was going to get built anyway. And I think they probably would have worked a deal to use the stadium in Las Vegas. I'm just saying. There are a lot of people who really wanted Las Vegas to have that stadium. That's why I call Las Vegas Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, in a way, because they're always ripping out and tearing up things and trying new things, right? The trouble is that it's done more with too much of a private sector-y approach rather than an effective marriage between government and the private sector. And you would say, what do you mean the government does a lot of things? Right, but it's always it's always on a piecemeal basis. Let me leave it at that before I get too far in the weeds there. All right. You know what's sad? The $750 million bond was supposed to go to the county schools, which are bad. Actually, that's not true. But it went to construction of the stadium for horrible. Whoa. All right, look. You know, I hear this idea all along. I'm going to leave that there. That's wrong. Okay? That's wrong. Mohammed, your presentation implies that there was this plan for $750 million bond issue sitting there already. And that's not how bond issues work. Okay? Bond issues work on a but-for basis. And the idea is that bond issue would not exist but for the demand to build the stadium. There wasn't anybody around that said, hey, by the way, we should simply raise $750 million from an additional hotel tax for the schools. I'm not saying they could not have done it. They could have, but they didn't. It was for the stadium. And I don't object to schools getting a carving of, you know, that money, but let's put it this way. That $750 million came up as a need to build a stadium that ultimately was going to cost just about $2 billion. Okay. It's a big number because you're talking about paying for something that's really, really expensive. Now, what they could have done, and I've advocated this again and again and again, is establish a large tax increment financing district where you collect the property taxes, and knowing that you're going to have additional development because of the stadium and the relocation of the Raiders to Las Vegas, you direct those property taxes to a type of redevelopment agency, and then you share part of that with the schools in Clark County. So you have a targeted school spending investment that comes because of the development that's caused by the relocation of the Raiders and the new stadium. You see what I'm getting at? That's how you do it. But don't think that that money was just sitting there. It wasn't. It wasn't. And my point is, and people do this. You know, they do say they do raise money. Now, Nevada has a gigantic problem that I'm hesitating in my prose because I don't want to veer off and get off topic, because I could very easily do that and never come back home, and that would annoy the piss out of you, and I wouldn't blame you. But those people who say, well, you should never spend, subsidies on sports, that's stupid. The question you should always ask is this: is your plan going to give money back to the public in such a way that the public benefits? That's the question you should ask. Because then if you look at a case-by-case basis, you find examples like AT&T Park in San Francisco where the answer is yes, big time. And you find other examples where the answer is no. The Oakland Coliseum, early on, the Oakland Coliseum was actually privately financed for the most part by Bob Haas, Robert Nahas, okay? The public money came in bringing the Raiders back from LA. It's a difference. But point I'm making is that, hey, you know what? Some of the most interesting and exciting planning financially is done for sports organizations. Some of the interesting and most exciting finance planning should be done for schools in the public sector. Just saying, okay? And that's why if you want to help the schools in the public sector, you design the most interesting financing plan from sports in such a way that can help them. Okay. So, but Palomalo, yeah, that's right. So boxing science says, be smart and do your job. He leaves his teammates out to dry like in KC in the late game touchdown to Kelsey. Then he says, I would love to be a Raiders film session. I bet the coach is yelling all the time, do your job. Talking about Abrams. John Claus says, Abrams reminds me how Powell very aggressively. I prize aggression. I'm from the Jack Tatum school, okay? You want people out there who fear you. Jack Tatum was that kind of guy. Abrams was that kind of guy. Charles Woodson was that kind of guy. Ronnie Lott was with the Niners was definitely that kind of guy. Of all of them, Ronnie Lott was definitely the most intelligent player, without question. But look at his coach, Bill Walsh. Okay, and so he says, speaking of Allegiant, Vic Tamura tweeted out that the elevators weren't working today, and he had to hike to the press box. Wow. That's good exercise. I'm sorry. Do you mean Vic Tafur? 32 Assassin? But to find that tweet. He says that, the elevators weren't working. Wow. That's news. Let's see here. He had the press box is way up there, too. Hey, guess what? Here comes Twitter. Yay. Maybe we can find that. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, while we're at it, I'm mumbling. All right. Share. Putting this on Twitter myself, and this expert at stopping offense, hashtag Raiders, hashtag Raider Nation. Okay. And there. All right. There it is. Okay. All right. Just put that. Now let me find Vic Tafur. There it is. Vic Tafur. Or he is, rather. Let's see here. It was an hour ago. Story on Gunther firing. He has to be first time coordinator. Has been active on a short week. Yep. Let's see here. He played defense. Let's see here. Is it Mariota? I wonder if Mariota gets a chance. Let's see here. The only thing I don't like, I'm going through Rick's. Well, you know what? I can't show this because I can't show this right now without having to stop. I can't show this now without having to stop the cast because I can't transfer over because the system is still acting like it's not available. So I'm just gonna like forget that. I click on share screen, I still get that. Yeah. At any rate, okay. So we listen because you speak the truth. I agree. Reinvestment. Thank you. He says, auto spill. I got you. Can't play like that anymore. It's a game for softy now. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if it's a game for softy so much as it is a game to be careful. You want to be careful. Okay. Can a hard-hitting safety survive in today's hitting NFL? I think so. They should have caught Carl Joseph alongside Raven. That would have been a great mashup, Yusuf. That's a good call. Yeah, Carl was a good player. So what about Wade Phillips or Will Muschamp as DC? I really would like to see someone African-American, Cesar. Okay. And the reason I say that is there's a tendency, there are a lot of great, not good, but great Black defensive coordinators out there that deserve a shot, and they don't get it. And I'll be happy when the league is so thoroughly mixed that it won't matter anymore. But we're not there, okay? And that, especially not there in college football. We have to stop this tableau. We have mostly Black players and mostly white coaches. Do you realize that Mike Shanahan is only 4'7"? I think had to stand on a box to coach Raider players. And in a number of instances, you ever seen like in basketball, Jeff Van Gundy? Okay. I met Jeff Van Gundy at the San Diego Super Bowl. We were crossing the street to the convention center. Jeff Van Gundy is not a tall man. And so my point is, we have to stop this mentality where you're giving somebody a chance to coach somebody else because they have the arrogance of intellect. In other words, they think that they know more. And on the other hand, there have to be more African Americans that are taught to have an arrogance of intellect so you can demonstrably explain your idea over somebody else's rather than subordinate your idea and have it be replaced by somebody else's. There is, some people call it white privilege. I don't like that term, but there's a white confidence, all right, that is slowly being learned by others who are African American, and it's particularly true in generational change, right? We're at the point now where you have a number of African Americans in different walks of society who have that arrogance of intellect because they know it, all right? And I'm not saying that arrogance of intellect is always a good thing, but you have to have that in order to get that position, okay? You have to believe. Looks like Sammy Baugh said about being quarterback in the NFL, you have to believe that you're the best SOB out there. All right? You have to. That's how Derek Mason got the job at Vanderbilt. Okay? And point I'm making is that the public has to have in its mind, hey, look, I'm confident enough in this person being able to do a good job who's Black. Yes, talented Black folks who are not getting the call. And they are truly demonstrably talented. And so the people that you name, like Wade Phillips is retired, Will Muschamp, okay, fine. But why not Derek Mason if he is a knowledge expert at stopping the very offense that has plagued the Raiders? That makes sense. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So you see that penalty? Yeah. They should use Abram like Jamal Adams to cover safety. Nathan, that's a great idea. I have to explore that one. And yeah, he says he cannot cover a baby like with a parachute. I like John Abrams. If I were Raider coach, the head coach, I want John Abrams to be in my 46. I want him to be my my Dave Do my my rover. Okay, I want him to be my rover. I think John Abrams' rover would be the cornerstone of a frightening defense. Oh, it would be so nice. Okay. He said, if you want an African American coach, what about Winston Moss or Derek Perry? Personally, I prefer Winston Moss or DC, both African American Democrat coaches. I'm saying that, and I hear that's fine. But the reason why I emphasize Derek Mason is because of the specific problem the Raiders have, that I believe his skill set is better to handle than anybody else's. Now, and so basically, I feel that, and it's nothing to take anything away from Winston Moss, right? At all. But I'm talking about the Raiders' specific defensive problem, and what he being Derek Mason is acknowledged to know better than anybody else how to stop when you have the right personnel to stop it. And I think he would do wonders with the Raiders. But having said that, I do think the next Raiders, if we take the issue of race aside for a moment, I do think the next Raiders D coordinator should come from the SEC. And I think it should be someone that has some success at working on schemes to stop these offenses, because a lot of those offensives have trickled up to the NFL level, right? They've trickled up to the NFL level. And so let me check something here while we're talking about Mr. Moss. And it's, yeah. And so so right now he is assistant coach Winston Moss of the Los Angeles Wildcats. Well, excuse me, he was. And he was with the Packers. And they fired him after some tweets about Aaron Rodgers, and I don't particularly care about that. Or maybe, that's and that happened 2 years ago. And so he said he would. Moss tweeted that this about finding a head coach who would hold quarterback Aaron Rodgers and others to a high standard. And he says, ponder this, what championship teams have are great leadership, period. It's not the defensive guru trend. It's not the safe trend. Find somebody that's going to hold number 12, and everybody in this building to a Lombardi standard, hashtag Lombardi standard, period, hashtag losing sucks. And so they dismissed him for a stupid reason. Okay. Make it fine. They sucked. All right. Whatever. Okay. My point is this. I don't see, and this is nothing against Winston at all. He was the head coach of in LA, the XFL, right? He's got a great background and pedigree. But my point is that Derek Mason has a specific skill set and experience at stopping. He's regarded as a genius. And this is what I'm focusing on. Okay. Derek Mason is regarded as a genius. So do I take Winston Moss, who has experience in relationships, cool, and is regarded as a great coach and a great leader of people, very valuable. But Derek Mason has that too. But he's also regarded as a defensive guru. And I don't see that with Winston Moss. That's all I'm saying, okay? That's all I'm saying, all right? He says, I just don't see Gruden going black. Look at Rod Marinelli decision. Defensive line was getting better with Buckner. Yeah, it was. Look at what he has. And well, if that's the case, John's going to be fired or should be, okay? And I don't mean this year. I mean next year. This, if I think you can't turn around in the middle of the season and decide you got to bring in somebody new. You got to go with what you got. All right. You got to go with what you got. But after the season, which is 3 games from now, hey, you have to make some changes. And that's one of the changes. But if John keeps doing that, he's not going to be long for that job. And right now he's up to what, 30 million? He's made he's 30 million of his $100 million contract. It's not bad. As a coach, I was a big fan of Hugh Jackson. He knows how to run an offense. Oh, Hugh is a genius at offense. I mean, he knows a great deal of offense. I think where he went wrong is, and I'll just say this. I think Hugh is another better offensive coordinator than head coach. Because as head coach, Hugh's problem is that I think he too often lets his ego get away from him. And I'll tell you the person that I think, we're talking about coaches, and I know that some general manager openings are coming up. I think Reggie McKenzie is an excellent GM. I know some of you don't like him, but I will tell you what he did for the Raiders that a number of people have forgotten. And Mr. Moss, former Raider, would be a good former Raider. Okay. I'm still stuck on Derek Mason. Nothing against Winston Moss at all. I'm still stuck on Derek Mason. I think Derek Mason has the intellectual cure for what ails the Raiders. I really do. Now, this would be a great debate. Should line them up. I mean, I like this. Okay, I like this. I'm stuck on Derek Mason. You guys are punching from Winston Moss. I like this. This is the kind of conversation we should have. Okay, and then you also mentioned Darren Perry, another one as well, another great coach as well. But I think what I'll do as I hear this is I'll also get that list, because I think a lot of you would like for me to see, a large list of African-American candidates, right? Gotcha. Okay. And that would be cool. That'd be cool. I'll get on that. But what happened was, and again, just to bring us back home, when I was thinking of Derek Mason and I thought, wait a minute. Because he got fired for if there is such a word, a stupider reason than Winston Moss getting fired for, which apparently they say there's more to that. And he did something noble. He brought in the first female kicker in the middle of all the social tumult of, this year. And they fired him? What idiots. Okay. Could a team be successful with a nickel defense all the time? Well, it depends on how you think of nickel defense. But the answer is this. There are a number of teams that have players, and the league, trajectory has been toward players that can play more than one position. Have you ever noticed how far back linebackers stand today? And yet they are still capable of downing a running back for no gain. Now, I personally don't like that far, because I feel like you're giving up yards anyway. And all I have to do is drive block the crap out of you, which a lot of teams don't do, and pick up yardage. I love to see a team actually do that. You're facing an odd front defense. They're playing their linebackers way off like that. Drive block the heck out of them till the cows come home. Love to see that. There is I will also say this, that hybrid defensive position approach has produced a lot of sloppy football and a lot of lousy leveraging. Okay. Um, he says players would buy into Moss as defensive coordinator. Oh, they're buying into Derek Mason as D coordinator too. The boxing science has got this one. I was wondering how that firing conversation went. Did he say, "Dog, you're gonna be fired. I gotta let you go"? Gruden says you want to get drinks later on buying. I think it probably did go like that. Yeah. I think it was more like, Davis texted fire Gunther. 2 words. All right. I'm just speculating. All right. Nathan says, trying to get Nathan's comment up here. Excuse me. Hide that one. I think it's slow here. Nathan says we need to hire young, smart college coaches that understand the way the league is heading and not old coaches. I'm not one to be ageist, okay? The Raiders need a coach that understands how to cope with the emerging offensive threats that are coming out of college and are in the NFL now. And as far as I'm concerned, Derek Mason, having coached the SEC and at Stanford, is at the top of that list because he has a proven track record of stopping those offenses. That's what I'm focused on. I'm talking schematically, okay? You want to talk about personnel? Hey, he was head coach. He's known. He's going to run into a lot of his former players. All right? So that issue, I think Derek Mason would be an outstanding D coordinator for the Raiders. I really do. Okay? Dabo Swinney? Why? What? I mean, you mean Dabo Swinney is the coach of Clemson? I don't know that. Don't quite know where you're headed with that, but I'm gonna. But I think I don't know where you're headed with all of this, but I think that. Again, Derek Mason. Mr. Moss is an excellent one. He was, again, a great leader of men. But that's head coach. And again, I'm really focused on the hiring of a coach that can successfully scheme against the emerging offensive threats in the NFL, many of which have come from the SEC, okay, and the Pac-12. I mean, the air raid, you already have elements of the air raid. I think, but the read option and the variations of that have been, I think, much more effective, okay? Much more effective, all right? Now, much more effective, okay? For the record, Dabo Swinney is who you mean, and he is the Clemson head coach already. So, no. You says Hughes should never have been fired. Reggie McKenzie, worst mistake I felt. I'll tell you what, Reggie, I'm going to say this. I shouldn't have said it, but, there, all right? They didn't get along. Reggie McKenzie and Hugh Jackson. And what happened was I said to Reggie McKenzie that the reason why I had wanted him fired was, and I wasn't trying to be mean, but I felt that he should stand up for his black head coach. And I felt that he didn't do that with respect to Hugh Jackson. He and I had a great conversation around this. I wasn't trying to be mean at all. I really like Reggie McKenzie and his family. They're great people. No, but it's for the same issues that I'm talking about that led me to talk about Derek Mason. Okay. Um, no. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He goes, "Look, I hear you, but you got to remember something. It doesn't. You can work with somebody. It doesn't mean that and they can be the same color, but it doesn't mean you're going to get along." Okay. So if you watch Hard Knocks, and I've been a big Hugh Jackson fan. That's documented. 2007, I wanted him to be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders because I brought in Tom Walsh, and he says, "Oh, Tom Walsh is going to bring back the deep threat and the Raiders' deep passing game." And I said, "Wait a minute. His blocking styles from the 70s is going to get our quarterbacks killed. And in preseason, that's precisely what happened." Okay. So I felt that he wouldn't put us in those positions. Okay. At all. Okay. John says, John Akala says he sees Raheem Moore as DC. I'm here. And I would like to see Raheem remain in position as head coach of the Falcons. And I don't know that it's clear that he's going to get fired. I think that he's done a great job okay, of bringing the Falcons back from the fire, even if, and I think he was a victim of Mr. Blank. All due respect in the world, great person. I think Mr. Blank pulled the trigger too slowly. Okay, he should have done it a while ago, and that if he had done it 2 games before when he did it, I think the Falcons would have been in a better position for the playoffs. But he didn't, and so Raheem was brought in and quite had to salvage and save the ship in the middle of a pandemic. And that's a tough go. So I would like to see Raheem myself stay as head coach for the Falcons. We'll see what happens. I think that he's made some mistakes, like, for example, with the Buccaneers, they played loose when they should have blitzed. They blitzed the Raiders. But it wasn't not the Buccaneers, but against the Buccaneers too, but against the Saints. They let the Saints off the hook twice. But they're very capable of beating the Saints. That was a schematic error. Cesar says, "I respect your opinion, Derek Mason, but Winston Moss produced great linebackers." I'm not. But see, Cesar, you're talking about people, relationships. I'm talking about scheme. So you haven't said to me, I found this post that talks about how Winston Moss defended or designed schemes that defended against the read option and the kind of offenses that have been plaguing the Raiders. I mean, that's how we got here, right? That's how we got here, okay? So I'm not saying anything against anybody except show me where they have a pedigree and they have a resume and they have examples of tenure where they can say, I stopped Oregon. How many people can say that? Derek Mason can say it. All right. And he has more familiarity with defending against those offenses, which weren't even, they weren't even the class of the NFL at the time, but they are now today. All right. Than anybody else or most anyone else. So why not? All right. Here's a fun fact. When Reggie was hired, Hugh and Reggie shared the same agent. Yeah. Debo, top college coach, never thought the NFL would be playing option football. Yeah, how about that? Yes, Muhammad True and Hugh and Reggie, same agent. That's crazy. Side note, somebody say Tom Cable. Tom Cable has made a great comeback in a lot of ways. Really proud of him. Derek Mason should just stay in college and take the Auburn or Illinois head coaching job. Last time we had a Stanford coach running a defense was Jason Tarver, and look how that turned out. I don't think that's the same. And I don't think that you should just look at a name or go online and say, oh, Stanford coach Raiders or whatever, and then spit out something. Again, my point is, see, again, Cesar, you haven't dealt with scheme. All right? That's all I care about. Can he show that he understands how to stop a scheme? I mean, so no. You haven't said anything to talk me out of Derek Mason. What, in fact, just the opposite, all right? Because you're focused on this anecdotal stuff. Hey, this dude's got evidence, all right? Raiders should look at broadcast table. Dungy. No, Dungy's Coach Dungy is making good money where he's at. He's retired. Derek Mason stopped the outside runs. Yes. Well, it's the outside runs that come from the read option. His schemes have done that, particularly with respect to what he's done both at Vanderbilt and Oregon. He's got a long resume of this. I think the Raiders would produce a demonstrably better defense with the players they have. Like, for example, Maurice Hurst, a great two-gap stopper who can also play single gap. All right. So, yeah. All right, folks, it is 1 hour and 16 minutes. It's 2:17 a.m. I'm going to shove off here, but I want to thank everybody for coming in. I'll be back to do this more often. This is where my home is, and my homies, and I will keep this up. All right. However, I believe there was one question that was asked that I did not answer, and I did not answer it because I simply got caught up in all of the floods, and that's this one. Yeah, I called Joseph, and three times last week, and I talked with him. I called today, and I haven't heard back from him. So he is at home. He was at home. Let me see. Not you. Let me see. They had sent him home from the hospital about a week ago. A week ago Friday. Joseph, how you feeling? Oh, hey, there are a bunch of Raider fans asking about you. You want to put you on speakerphone? It's up to you. Oh, okay. I'll just. Okay, hold on a second. I think. Hey, everybody, this is Joseph. He's like an old school. And Joseph just says he appreciates your prayers. And Joseph, they can hear you.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. And give them your prayers, folks. So anyway, hold on a second, Joseph. Don't go anywhere. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Yeah, don't go anywhere. I'm just yeah, but Muhammad Ahmad had asked about you, so I'll give him an update. So yeah, he's fighting, folks. So pray for him, and we will see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks everybody. I'll see you. All right.